I received a couple of items from England this week that I would like to share, and they can be a helpful part of our work today. The first is a meditation, and as I read this meditation, you listen for the points, or even a point that will stand out to you, to be of value in your own meditation work. I close my eyes to other people's imperfections. I see in them the omnipresent good. Within them dwells the infinite love and perfection. And when I cast the beam out of my eye, I shall see more clearly not my brother's faults, but his perfections. In all my fellows is the infinite love. Henceforth I shall see it, and help to draw it forth. In everyone I shall see something to admire and reverence, and something to love. And I shall not stop with people. I will look also for the good in every circumstance, in every difficulty, in every temporary so-called failure. I will look for the good in every blade of grass and every opening flower, in the wind which blows and the sun that burns my cheek. Rain or sunshine, fair weather or foul, I will see good in everything, see perfection underlying all. Out of these will grow a new sympathy, a more extensive and embracing love, a larger and wider consciousness. For everyone and everything are my brothers. Each forms a part of the infinite whole. We are one with one another, and the universal life and mind of which we form a part. And this is from Mr. Hamblin, Henry Thomas Hamblin. God made all that was made. God is the underlying reality. God is actually the truth of all being. Now, when we see something contrary to that, it isn't because it has actual existence so much as it is that we are not seeing correctly that which is there. And how does that come about? It comes about in this way. Originally, since there is but one mind, that infinite, that divine, that universal mind is ours. And in it or through it, we have no capacity for seeing or knowing other than that which is true, real, spiritual, perfect. Now, and there would be no use of asking how this came about, since at the present time there is no answer. But at some time or other in history, a selfhood was set up apart from God, came into being, that which we call I. I, Joel, I, Bill, I, Mary. And with it came the conviction that we of our own selves had a will, a desire, a wish, a thought. And so we began living lives of our own. We began living as if we were a single unit, with no consideration for the rest of the world and with no consideration for our source. No, it was just as if there were I, Joel, and I will see how I can get along, and I will do the best for myself, and I will use whatever effort or ability I have, and always this I became the prominent and finally the only consideration. Out of that came the saying, self-preservation is the first law of nature. In other words, kill, destroy anyone or anything else as long as you can save yourself. That is what human nature is. The desire to perpetuate itself, and of course that at the expense of anyone else. Makes no difference what happens to the neighbor or the nation on this side of us or this side of us. Makes no difference what happens to our competitor here or our competitor here. Human nature says self-preservation is the first law of nature, and so this I being, this Joel being, Mary being, John being, came into existence and has continued in existence at the expense of anybody or everybody that tried to interfere. Now, through spiritual revelation, we are coming back to the original truth of being, namely that God is my Father, but God is your Father. My Father and your Father. Therefore, we be brethren. We be of one parentage. We be of one household. And so this identity called I begins to go out of existence, and it gets to be, in the first stages, we. We agree that even though I may for a time be capable of certain errors or evils, we agree that I, on the whole, mean well and therefore am well, but it's the other fellow who is not quite right. But when we come to the we stage, which is the beginning of this meditation, we come to where we agree not only that I am pretty well all right on the whole, but that also now I am I'm going to behold my brother as all right, and my sister as all right, and I'm going to look to them for good qualities as well as I would like them to look to me for good qualities. If I had my way, all of my friends, all of those who are acquainted with me, would, whatever time they spend thinking of me, I would have them dwell on my good qualities and sort of forget my bad ones and say, well, he'll outgrow those. And I know that that is the truth about you. If you had your way, you would make the acknowledgement that you are not perfect, and that at the present time you cannot help your imperfections, but that you would like your friends and your relatives to really see your inner self, your inner being, that which you know of yourself to be good, and to sort of gloss over and kind of forget those evil things until you've had a chance to outgrow them. Now, the first stage of human existence is the one of self-preservation, in which it's all a matter of I, me, mine. The second stage of human existence is an improved one, where we begin to find good in others. We begin to find good in you, even if it's not visible. Even if to the outer world an individual is a sinner, out and out bad, we in our higher sense of humanhood look through that appearance and begin to discern the good that is hidden there. Now, both of these stages of humanhood must be outgrown, because there is no real truth in either of them. All that can be said of them is that they are a better state of humanhood than out-and-out evil, but they are not yet touching upon the truth. They are still at the level of being good humans, because, you see, it requires a good human to overlook your faults and to see only the good of you. In our work, we indulge no self-condemnation. And on the other hand, we indulge no condemnation of anyone who comes within range of our thought. If we did, be assured of this, there would be no healing power in our consciousness. None whatsoever. As long as we judge from appearances, as long as we say good and evil, we have no healing power in our consciousness. We are then just on the level of the human being, and it is then the blind leading the blind. So, for an individual to believe that he can go on in life seeing both good and evil, accepting them both as if they actually existed, seeing two powers, one good power and one dangerous power, one evil power, one constructive power and one destructive power, to go on in that state of consciousness and hope to have a healing consciousness or a spiritual consciousness of any nature is an impossibility. The first stage must be to see with a single eye, and that is to behold only good. Now, in our earliest stages, we begin to see good by seeing only the good that is in person or condition. And it is from that stage that we are enabled to graduate to the spiritual consciousness. Now, the spiritual consciousness does not see good in you, and it does not see good in me. As a matter of fact, it dare not even see good in Jesus Christ. No, you have to rise above that level of consciousness that sees good in Buddha or in Jesus Christ or in any other person or character or saint or sage or seer. The Master is very specific on that point. Why callest thou me good? There is but one good, the Father in heaven. And so in the spiritual state, you do not see a group or a world of people in varying degrees of goodness any more than you will see them in goodness and badness. You rise through the spiritual vision to where you understand that God alone is good. Now you're in an entirely different realm. You have lifted yourself above the realm of man whose breath is in his nostril. Cease ye from man whose breath is in his nostril, for wherein is he to be accounted of? Put not your faith in princes, not even when they're good princes. No, the Hebrews at one time wanted a king, and they were warned. Don't want that king, you may get him. And then they were told what would happen if they got a king, even if they got a good one. They'd end up being slaves. And so it is. The very moment that you bring yourself under the jurisdiction of any individual, no matter how good they may be, you bring yourself ultimately into slavery. That is just, well, I'm thinking now of the original days of metaphysics, when people brought themselves under the benevolence of good thinking and right thinking, and thereby made themselves just as much a slave of a good thought as they had made themselves before that a slave of a good thing. Now, we do not become enslaved with a good thought any more than we do with a good thing or with a good person when we rise above thought into the realm of truth. There's quite a different thing between thought and truth. Truth is that which is. A thought is a concept or an opinion or a belief about that. And of course the thought or belief or concept can be wrong. The truth is that 2 times 2 are 4. But a thought may be that 2 times 2 are 5. There are just as many wrong thoughts as there are right thoughts. It is just as possible to think a wrong thought even while you're believing that you're thinking a right thought. Oh, for thousands of years, it was definitely known that the world was flat. Matter of fact, if you disagreed with it, you went to prison. And that was, of course, a right thought, that the world was flat. But it wasn't truth. It was just a thought about the truth, and it was a wrong thought about the truth. Now then, if you were to go back to some of the older metaphysical textbooks, you would find that they embrace as much thought about error, which they thought then was truth, as truth itself. That always must be. The moment that you have a thought, and it's your thought, it can be a right thought or a wrong thought, regardless of your opinion of it. In the same way, as long as you have a person before you, they can be a good person or a bad person. It is only when you eliminate the person and the thought that you come to truth itself. Why? Because you come to one. And when you come to one, and that one's God, then you have no error. And you have no belief, and you have no concept, and you have no opinion. That is why one of the best known of the sayings is that of Lao Tse, that if you can voice it, if you can think it, then it isn't true. In other words, referring to God, if you can have a thought about God, you can be sure it isn't God. Why? Because God is infinite, and any thought you would have would be finite. And therefore, you never could, through thinking, know the truth about God. Another thing, if you knew the truth about God, you'd be knowing it about something separate and apart from your own being, and there is no such thing. Therefore, if you can know a truth about God, it isn't true at all. And so if you know the truth about man, it isn't true at all. Because there is no man separate and apart from God. Now, if you want to know the truth, you can. But the only truth you can know is, and that's it, is. That's the only truth you can know. Truth is. God is. The moment you go a step further than that, you are defining what God is, and then it becomes your opinion, or mine, or Mrs. Fillmore's, or Mrs. Eddy's, or Jesus Christ. But it becomes an opinion or a concept or a theory. The moment you go beyond God is, you are getting into the realm of human thought, human opinion, human conception, and there's no power, no healing power, no regenerating, no saving power in your opinion of God, or any man's concept of God, All power is in God itself. And therefore, we are coming now to this approach to spiritual living which is carried forward in our treatment. If you remember Wednesday night, I said that we do not take the name or identity of a person into our treatment, nor do we take the name of the condition into our treatment. And now you see the reason why. We only take one thing into our treatment, and that is the realization of God. Only the realization of God goes into the treatment, because whatever reveals itself to us as to the nature of God becomes the established truth, the Word made flesh, about he or she whom we call the patient. Now, in our meditation then, instead of seeing good in our fellow man, we will rise above that and we will see the good in God. We will realize the nature of God. And then if we wish to see it made flesh on earth, we will realize that everything we have known about God now reveals itself as man. The Father, you know, and the Son is one. There is not a Father and a Son. The Father and the Son is one. So whatever you understand about the Father is what you see revealed as the Son. Remember, the Father does not transfer his qualities to someone called a son. Oh no. Nor is there a person out here waiting actually to become the Son or to take on the qualities of the Son. They can't. If I have a concept of you, that can never become the Son of God. And if you have a concept of me, that can never become the Son of God. But that which I am is the Son of God, and that which you are is the Son of God, regardless of any opinion I may entertain or any concept I may hold of you. Therefore, to know the truth about you, I must close my eyes to appearances. Why? Because all I can see with my eyes is my concept of you. I can't even see you as you are sitting there. All I can see is my view of you, my concept of you, that which my senses tell me about you, and that isn't the truth about you at all. If I could measure my opinion of you with what you know of yourself, you'd see how far wrong I am. And it's the other way around. If you only could know that no matter what you are thinking of me has no relationship at all to what I actually am. No matter how fine you may think you are beholding me, how wonderfully you are beholding me, rest assured it isn't nearly as wonderful as I really am. And the reason is God is the only I am. And God is the only I that I am. That is the great revelation, not only of Moses, but of Jesus. I am that I am. The I that I am is that. That I is what I am. I am that. And that is why the Hindus have that same statement in their teaching. I am that. That I am. That I am. You see? That I am. That is the truth about me. I'm not talking now about to what extent I humanly may be living up to it or aware of it. I'm talking about what in my natural essence I am. Now, the closer I come to the realization that God is my true identity, the more nearly am I able to show forth the qualities of good in my human experience. The more ignorant I am of my true identity, the more subject I am to the errors and evils of the world. It is only in proportion to the degree of realization that we attain of our own selfhood that we can begin in a measure to show it forth. And we show it forth in a little better health at first, in a little better supply, in a little better character, morals, whatever, integrity. But eventually, as we get to realize more and more, why, I'm not trying to find good in me, I'm not trying to find good in you, I understand good to be the characteristic, the nature of the I, God. And so we get into a higher meditation. This is our fourth. The meditation in which we practice over and over and over, hour by hour during the day, looking all around the room, looking all around our office, looking all up and down the streets we travel on, and seeing through the appearance and realizing, why, no, there is no good or evil there. The only good is in God, but it's universally manifested. And then that not only brings out in ourselves a higher sense of our own selfhood, but it brings out a higher sense of our selfhood in those who are receptive and responsive to truth. Now, of course, always there are those who will never respond to truth during this lifetime. That is why in every age that there has been a Messiah, there has also been a crucifixion. That's why in every age that there has been a new religious teaching, and more especially those most nearly approximating truth, that persecution has followed those that followed it. You'll see a very clear picture of that as you see this picture, the robe that is here in town. And you will see the evil that is associated with everything good that is presented to the world. Why? Because there are those in whose life the power of good would destroy the very things that they gloat in, their personal powers, their personal wisdom, their personal goodness, their personal wealth, their personal emperorhood or kinghood, or whatever it may be. And so in those people who wish to perpetuate that government over others, or dominion, or self-glorification, there will be a resistance to truth, and you will not break through that crust very lightly. But as long as you remember that you are not sent to this earth to proselyte or to change the world, but merely to show forth the glory of God and let those who are ready take from it, you will come into no personal sense of condemnation or of persecution. However, those who inaugurate a teaching and those workers who are associated with it will for a while come under the condemnation of those not yet ready for truth to penetrate their consciousness. We have nothing to do with that, for the simple reason that our handling of that situation is always this. Whatever picture we are presented with that is not of God can only remain while it can be a blessing in our experience. Now please remember that nobody outside of ourselves is ever persecuting us. No one outside of ourselves is ever abusing us or misrepresenting us. Never believe that for a minute. Never blame anyone for any sense of discord that is coming into your experience for they are entirely blameless. It is only for one reason that these things come. No, let me say there are two reasons. To the younger student coming up, they come for this reason, that they must come to a place of the overcoming of the human good. In other words, there is a difference between physical harmony and spiritual wholeness, a vast difference between physical good and spiritual harmony. Physical good, no matter what degree it is, has an ending. You may be in perfect physical health today, but all you have to do is let the calendar go around often enough, and that good health will be changed. If from nothing else, just from age. It makes no difference how wealthy you may be today. Just wait long enough and you won't have it. There are always the cycles of business and the cycles of governmental changes and the government of everything, and if you just wait long enough, they used to say that 3 generations from shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves. Sometimes it's 4 generations or 5, but it's inevitable. The changes must come in the human picture that makes this inevitable. Now, if that weren't true, in the thousands of years that have gone by, a few dozen people would have all the wealth in the world. But a few do seem to get it for a while, but it divides itself up. Now, just as the younger student must come to the realization that physical health and physical wealth do not constitute spiritual harmony, so eventually they will be forced either into the loss of money or the loss of health or the loss of companionship or the loss of something until some lesson comes home severe enough to drive them out of their happiness with physical health or physical wealth, until they see that there is no permanent foundation of good in human good, that to have reliance on physical health or physical wealth is to have a reliance aside from God. And so sooner or later, everyone who touches the spiritual path comes to one of those, well, in ancient mysticism they called it dark night of the soul, and Paul called it dying daily. Don Blanding says he died at dawn. Everybody comes to a place of dying. Everyone dies to the hope and faith in material existence. Everyone on the spiritual path comes ultimately to a dying to faith, hope, and reliance on physical well-being. But now do you see what I'm coming to when I say that as you go on later and get higher in this work, you're called upon for a higher demonstration. And that is the realization that there aren't any good people on earth. And you must eventually lose all your faith in man whose breath is in his nostril, even if that man happens to be Jesus Christ. Yes, you have to lose your faith in man whose breath is in his nostril in the realization, why, God alone is good. Then when you do, you'll find that Jesus Christ is a Savior. Why? Because he's nothing of himself. Now you understand what he means when he says, I can of my own self do nothing. My doctrine is not mine. If the Father that doeth the works, the doctrine is his. Now Jesus can become a Savior to you because you've realized that in and of himself he is nothing, but insofar as he allowed himself to be taken over by the Father, he is the Savior of mankind. Then you can find your religious teacher and find that your teacher can be all things to you until you yourself are anchored in the Spirit. But that will only come when you've learned that your teacher is not a good man or a good woman. When you have lost your faith in them as person and commence to see why God alone is good, then you'll find that the teacher who has accepted that has become filled with the Spirit itself, and then the Spirit does the works, not the teacher. The practitioner doesn't do the works. The realization of the nothingness of human identity does the work, because it allows the allness of God, the allness of the Spirit to come in. So you will find that throughout this whole experience on the spiritual path, there are stages. And I said a couple of weeks ago, that probably there would be more to say about the visit to England a few months ago, and this brings up the opportunity for it. Mr. Hamblin and I had 2 full days together out in the country, and out of it came some very beautiful and inspiring ideas, and it was evident that in that receptivity, truth was revealing itself. Truth was unfolding. And so he has just written this editorial, and I would like to read from it, because it follows the days that we had there and some of the points that were brought to light. He says, "It is possible for a man to rise out of the rut of circumstance and to get on top of life instead of life getting on top of him. It is possible to rise out of evil habits and become a free man. It is possible to overcome every evil which confronts us and every weakness which is in our makeup, for greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world, and all things are possible to him that believeth. But when a man has attained to self-mastery and also mastery over circumstances, he may find that he has passed into a new phase of life, a new experience, a higher method of working. Up till now he has struggled and striven and has attained to a measure of mastery, but at a high cost. Up till now he has been able to say with St. Paul, 'I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me.' Now he has to learn the secret of effortless attainment, what the old Taoists termed wu-wei, or action in inaction. Jesus expressed the same truth when he said that he did not do the works, but that it was the Father in him who did them. He said, 'Of my own self I can do nothing.' The self has to cease to strive before the action of God can take place. Yes, on the surface, all is strain and effort, but deep down within our being is that which is unimpeded accomplishment. At that level, nothing has to be achieved, for everything already is. Therefore, if we want to accomplish the seemingly impossible, we do not have to strive and struggle, but rather to discover that inward state where no achievement is necessary, because all is already whole and perfect and never has been otherwise. This is a much higher method of working than is usually employed, and it took me a long time to discover it. Most people, including teachers, pray or treat in order to achieve a certain thing. Thus, although they pray to God and declare truth, yet actually they are principally concerned with the healing of a certain condition. Thus, God is not put first, but the trouble. That is why Jesus said that we should seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, after which all necessary things would be added. Instead of straining for the things which perish, we are to find instead that essence of life which can never fade or grow less or pass away. We are to find that inner life which is self-renewing from within itself, and thus is ever fresh, with that freshness which was present or is always present at the dawn of creation. All of the difficulties and apparent frustrations of life are an aid rather than a hindrance. They are an aid in that they make us seek God as the only remedy. First, we seek God in order to find relief or deliverance. This is as it should be. Each stage is right for us at the time. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. 91st Psalm. We may find ourselves caught in a net of circumstance from which we cannot disentangle ourselves. No matter which way we look, there appears to be no possible way of escape, and so we betake ourselves to prayer. But while this may be effective at first, or for a time, yet there may come a time when even prayer proves to be ineffective. We may keep on praying, and still no answer comes, and it would appear that our problem or trouble must remain with us forever. At last we reach that stage in which we become changed, and in which we receive such a revelation of God that we no longer want our prayer answered. To the uninitiated, this may appear to be failure and defeat, but actually it is the first step in a new life of victory and overcoming. The highest form of prayer is becoming silent and still before God. Such prayer is wordless, but not everyone is ready to practice wordless prayer. We are led up to it by stages. Firstly, our prayers may be selfish and self-centered. Next, they may be more useful and cosmic. Finally, we realize that there is nothing to pray for, really, and that all we need is God. When praying for things, we are making use of effort. But when we commune with God, we simply rest in him and are carried along effortlessly, as it were, on the bosom of a mighty river of peace. When we enter into God's peace, we enter the true silence, and immediately deep breathing comes upon us, together with a realization that our true life has infinite extensions beyond time and space. Joel Goldsmith says that when he enters the silence and deep breathing comes upon him, a healing treatment takes place. He says that he himself does nothing more. The Spirit continues the treatment. It is a great joy to know that there is one in America who is working on lines similar to our own. Each of us developed it long before we had ever heard of the other. Perhaps instead of using the term developed, I should rather say that the method was revealed to us in the fullness of time. And of course, you who are, that is the end of Mr. Hamlin's editorial, you who are familiar with the writings know that this is the way, the infinite way message has been presented. It does not ignore those first or early steps in which we use the letter of truth, in which in our treatments we use all of the truth that is possible to know, but then as quickly as possible it leads us into a form of treatment or prayer which is absolutely wordless, in which we never seek to change an outer condition, never seek to improve or heal or enrich, in which our prayer is a contemplation. Let us say that over there are beautiful plants, and we would sit here and contemplate, view those plants, enjoy the beauties of them, without one single desire or trace to make them so or change them. And the reason is that we can behold the beauties of them, and we see that they do not need changing or improving or correcting or healing. Now, through spiritual sense, we know that God is your being, and so we never need to change you or heal you or improve you, because we do not see the human selfhood. We see you as you are. And we can only do that, not with the eyes, with the soul senses. In my last letter, which was all on the soul life and this higher sense of prayer, which you will find in the next 3 letters to come, the same idea. As you look out through the soul, you behold God. You don't behold perfect men and women. You behold God as the very Son. In other words, the Father appearing as the Son. It comes from the vision given us also that I and the Father are one. Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, all in one. Now, thou seest me, thou seest the Father that sent me. Well, this is equally true. When I see you, I see the Father that sent you, for you and the Father are one. But I must be sure that I am not trying to see you humanly as a good human, but rather that I have forgotten your good qualities and your bad qualities, and with my spiritual vision, I see only God as your being, God as your life, God as your soul, God as your spirit, God as the substance of your being. Now, in this meditation, I have one of those clocks that run around, run around, run around. First thing you know, they're there, before I am. The first thing you know, no, we're in this 4th stage of meditation, and as in the first, we saw God as our sufficiency, and then in the second, we saw God as the one power, God as the one life. Always, you see, we were always seeing God right from the beginning. Even in our simplest meditation, we never took man whose breath is in his nostril, only God. Then in the 3rd one, we had the vision. What was the essence of it? Yes, thank you. The activity of truth in individual consciousness. God again. Truth is God. God is truth. The activity of truth in individual consciousness as the transforming agency of these outer circumstances. Now as you come to this 4th one again, you will, and this time, employ it in looking out upon this world. Being careful when you're driving not to see a good driver or a bad driver, and but to see God as the driver, Father and Son as one. If you will have God as the driver, you will not be concerned with bad driving on your own part or those around you. And in the same way, with all those with whom you come in contact, home, business, politics, wherever it may be, you must reserve one little area of your consciousness in which you realize God to be the identity of every individual, and you must carry that right down into the animal world. That is why you will find that the problems of life are our greatest blessing on this path. The most dangerous place to come to on this path is a place of complete harmony. More people have been wrecked in metaphysical living by harmony than by discord. Too many people have come into metaphysical religious work and found some health and supply and rested back and said, this is it. And you see, this isn't it at all. That's the beginning of trouble. Unless you begin to see that the harmony in and of itself isn't it, but the fact that God is your identity, that's what makes it. And that's why troubles must come until you stop being good man or good woman, or seeing others as good men or good women, or trying to find the good in them. Don't try to find the good in anybody. Realize that good dwells alone in God, and then you will find good in every individual under the globe, in the globe, on the globe. Why? Because I and the Father are one. God and Father, Father and Son are one. All that the Father is, the Son is. All that the Father hath, the Son has. Why? Because they are one and not two. And the moment you begin to see God as the only good, you are approaching the highest level of spiritual unfoldment that is attainable. In every one of the writings of the men and women of the world who have attained a name through achievement of mysticism, you will find this same thread, that until they found God to be the only reality, they found nothing. They found temporary good here, temporary good there, but always there were problems. Always. The great question has always been, why do people who become religious teachers have so many or practitioners have so many problems? Well, heaven's sakes, if they didn't, where would we ever get? Problems there must be until the ascension. Problems there must be. Jesus had to have the betrayal of Judas, the denial of Peter, the doubting of Thomas, the falling asleep of disciples. Why? Why, just think, in the Garden of Gethsemane, he was going to depend on 12 disciples to stay awake with him. Where was God? Why, he had to learn that he didn't need 12 disciples. He had God. He was depending in his own thought on the fact that he had developed these 12 to their spiritual vision. And you see, they hadn't gotten there at all. And his dependency on them would have been fatal, except that he himself saw in the Garden of Gethsemane that it was no use. And then he turned to the Father exclusively. Now, there we are. And so comes forth the demonstration. Well, you will see as you are on this path that crucifixion is inevitable. But the crucifixion is the wiping out of the selfhood. How do we know when the selfhood has been crucified? Simple as 2 times 2 is 4. When there isn't a thing in the world left that you want to pray for. That is when the selfhood is crucified, and you may look like a man or a woman on earth, but you're not. You have attained your union with the Father. Only then, when you can honestly say, I have nothing to pray for, nothing that I want, nothing that I want to get rid of. Whatever is, and in its own unfoldment will appear in whatever way it should. Then you know that selfhood has been crucified. But you ought to see some of the steps that lead up to it, to where you beg and pray and plead and sometimes fight a little bit with the Father. Really come to grips with the Father about why he isn't doing this and why he isn't doing that. And that constitutes the dark night of the soul, because you wonder why you're not lifted above these discords of sense, these inharmonies of sense. And then all of a sudden, when enough of it has taken place, you realize, why, certainly I brought it on myself. I was praying for something. For what? Why, in the praying for something, I acknowledged a selfhood apart from God. Because be assured of this, God's selfhood isn't praying for a thing. Well, I don't know, there's just a couple of minutes left, and I forgot to tell you that we are continuing this Wednesday evening and Sunday afternoon through March and April, and we can continue it through May if you like. We haven't yet made arrangements for this room for May, but we have it for June for that closed classwork. Also, that all of the writings are here, and many of them are necessary for an understanding of what I've said to you today. You'll find, particularly in connection with the day's work, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd San Francisco lecture series. Contains the meditation, treatment, and the final realization that God is not mocked. And that is what we all must learn. God is not mocked. there is no way to live a human life and come into the harmony of spiritual being. And that we learn. And another thing, don't forget that the monthly letter is available to anyone who wishes it just by leaving their name and address with a request for that letter. And those who haven't left names or addresses for the general file are certainly invited to do so, and they will receive notices of whatever nature may go out. Insofar as it is possible, can I ask that you, before each meeting, be here 10 or 15 minutes early so as to come into this state of receptivity that is so necessary for our work. Some of you already know that when I come here, I do not have a prepared program, although I may have a note or something, but I do not have a prepared program. Whatever comes out for your benefit, for meeting of your need, and you're the only one who can draw that out. I'm not a mind reader humanly, but if there is a degree of quiet, of peace, if the human atmosphere has subsided and there is a spiritual stillness, then when I come, out of the depth of that, just the very message comes forth that is necessary at the moment. So it is a help to me to bring forth the right message, but it is a help to me to be a greater help to you, because as I've said to you before, out of this, since the Word is become flesh, and since every unfoldment of truth is a revelation of God, healing and harmony must follow every one of these meetings. And so until Wednesday, thank you. Thank you.